The two tank engines then decided to see what was going on inside Alec's coaches. They lagged behind a bit to get a better look. Inside the coaches were lots of other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. They were singing Christmas carols merrily and happily. When Kyle saw Thomas and Percy outside, he and the other children happily ran to the windows and waved at them. Thomas and Percy smiled and tooted their whistles in response. As the two engines continued to travel along with the Polar Express, they watched the children eat candies with nougat centers as white as the snow. They drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Though they could not hear what they were saying, Thomas and Percy could clearly see that they were enjoying themselves tremendously. The lights of towns flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward, and Thomas and Percy traveled alongside. Soon there were no more lights to be seen. They traveled through cold, dark forests where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from the engines as they thundered through the quiet wilderness. Percy began to get a little scared. Alec, just how far away is the North Pole? Very far, Percy. Why? What's wrong? Are you feeling scared? Maybe just a little. I mean, Thomas has left Sodor before. Many times. More times than I care to admit, Thomas muttered quietly to himself. But the only times I ever left Sodor was 2 times. One when we went to the big city to answer a little girl's letter, and 2 when we all went to the great railway show. But I don't think I've ever been this far away from home before, especially not at night time. In a dark and cold forest, no less. Don't worry, Percy, Thomas puffed comfortingly. You have me and Alec, and the children are with us too. We're all traveling together to the same place. Nothing bad is going to happen to us, I promise. Right, Alec? That's right, Thomas. You and Percy will be all right. Just think nice thoughts instead of scary ones, Percy. Well, all right. I'll try. So Percy began to think about nice things, Christmas things. He thought about tinsel and holly, snowmen and snowflakes, Christmas trees and ribbons, the smiles on children's faces as they played with their newly opened toys. Percy soon forgot all about feeling scared. He was very glad that his best friend, Thomas, and their new friend, Alec, was there with him. They climbed mountains so high it seemed as if they would scrape the moon. But Alec, being a strong engine for his age, never slowed down. Nor did Thomas and Percy. Faster and faster they ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like cars on a roller coaster. Thomas and Percy, while enjoying the trip and the many sights to be seen through it, were starting to get very tired. Their axles ached and their wheels were growing sore. Alec, Thomas panted. I don't know how much longer I can last. My wheels are all wobbling, Percy panted as well. I feel like I'm going to fall apart. Don't worry, you two, Alex said. a little red in the face because he too was growing tired. We're nearly there. It won't be long now. Soon the mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. Soon they were crossing a barren desert of ice. Here we are, young ones, the great polar ice cap. Thomas and Percy, now at ease a bit from traveling on smoother and flatter grounds, couldn't believe their eyes. Bouncing buffers, Thomas! No one will ever believe this! Thomas agreed. This has to be the most extraordinary thing we've ever done. We are the first sonar engines to travel to the top of the world, Percy said excitedly, peeping his whistle with joy. Then, as if by magic, the starry sky filled with colorful ribbons of light. Thomas and Percy both gasped, "Wow!" Alex smiled at the sight. "Thomas and Percy, I give you the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights." "Oh, Thomas, I'm so happy to have come with you on this adventure." "And I'm very happy to have shared it with you, Percy," Thomas said, smiling at his best friend. Then lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. Thomas and Percy gasped. "Is that what I think it is? What we think it is?" Then the conductor looked out of Alex's cab and smiled at the two tank engines. "Yes, Thomas and Percy, there is the North Pole." "Percy, we made it! We actually made it! We are the first sonar engines to reach the North Pole!" And both engines peeped happily. Alec blew his whistle loudly. He too was very happy, not just because they had reached their destination, but also because the two tank engines had experienced this journey as well. The North Pole was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. Thomas and Percy wanted to explore, but they knew they had to stay with Alec so that they wouldn't get lost. As Alec was going slower now, Thomas and Percy lagged behind slightly so they could see the children again. Kyle opened one of the coach's windows to talk to them. "Thomas! Percy! Kyle! At long last we have a chance to talk to you again. Did you and the other children enjoy the journey?" We certainly did, though honestly I felt a lot happier knowing you two were coming along. I'm so glad you and Percy are both here, Thomas." "So are we," Thomas said. "Though the journey was long and tiring, it was worth it to see this." Then Percy said happily. Then he looked around. and became confused. "But, where are all the elves? Shouldn't they be around?" The other children looked out the other coach windows. They were wondering the same thing. Where were all the elves? The conductor came in and looked out the window. "They are gathering at the center of the city. That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas." "Who receives the first gift?" asked a little boy with blonde hair. "You will choose one of you," said the conductor. "Percy, I hope he chooses Kyle," Thomas whispered. So do I, Percy whispered back. Look! Cried a little girl with blonde hair. The elves! The children, Thomas and Percy, looked and gazed with surprise and delight. They saw hundreds of elves. As Alec, Thomas and Percy drew closer to the center of the North Pole, they slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the 3 engines could go no farther, they stopped. Thomas and Percy were glad to have finally stopped. Their wheels were very sore. They were tired, but happy. The conductor led the children outside, but before leading them off to where they'd meet Santa Claus, he allowed them to socialize with Thomas and Percy for a bit. The 2 engines had never been so happy to see the children so joyful, and the most joyful among them, naturally, was Kyle. Even the elves were excited to meet two of Sodor's famous engines for the first time. Finally, after a few moments, the children left the 2 engines with Alec.